This is my 20th season scouting now, and the word toughness has a different meaning for me from 20 years ago to today. Toughness back 20 years ago was mean, chop, will fight, will like you say, put a little bit of fear into somebody. Toughness now is, will he go to the net? Will he take a little bit of a pounding to bang in a rebound? Will he put his body on the line to block that shot? The word toughness has definitely changed for me since I've started scouting. And saying that the game of hockey in the last 20 years is, it's not the same game that I was scouting 20 years ago as I'm scouting today.
That was Dennis Holland, amateur scout for the Dallas Stars, and you are listening to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin.
Just watch me now.
Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin. I am Jason Podolin, your host, and today I'm actually recording this intro almost 2 weeks after my interview with Mr. Holland. So we had this conversation just before the break, meant to get it out to you before that, but as the holidays go with 3 kids and being a hockey coach, it was a little bit crazy. So here I am on December 27th, I believe, recording the introduction for this really, really solid interview with Dennis Holland. Dennis is an amateur scout for the Dallas Stars. Now, for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with what amateur actually means, that means that Dennis is responsible for finding the best 17-year-olds, coming 18-year-old hockey players in Western Canada. That is his region that he's responsible for, and he goes around to the arenas and he watches these 17-year-old players in these different leagues, whether it be the BCHL or whether it be the USHL or the AJHL or the WHL, and he finds these players. So he's not looking necessarily at players who have already been drafted. That's not his thing. He's not looking for any of the pro leagues. He's not going to Canucks games. He's watching young men that he is trying to find prospects for the Dallas Stars. That's his job. And I know that a lot of people who listen to this podcast are either players or parents who have aspiring players that want to be drafted or want to impress a scout or who want to get noticed and move on to bigger and brighter things. So this episode is phenomenal. Anytime you have a chance to talk to a scout, someone who's in the stands watching these players, what they're looking for them as athletes, what we're looking for as far as from the person, from the character standpoint, I think it's a great opportunity to be all ears. Dennis has been doing this for 20 years. He's been in the game for a long time. He was a player himself and a very, very recognized and awarded player. He played in the Vernon Lakers, a BCHL team at 16, where he had over 100 points as a 16-year-old, or maybe even as a 15-year-old. Then he went to Portland and had an amazing WHL career, put up 82 goals one year, 82 goals, 85 assists for 167 points, led the entire WHL in scoring. He was drafted the year before in the 3rd round, which today would be the 2nd round, 52nd overall to the Detroit Red Wings. So he was a heck of a player himself, had a long pro career, didn't get to the NHL. We did talk about that and why that may or may not have happened. But Dennis is a wealth of knowledge. His older brother, Ken, is the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, so a hockey family through and through. And to have an opportunity to spend an hour with somebody of Dennis's skill set, who gets paid to identify talent, skill, the intangibles required to make it to the next level is what was an amazing opportunity for me and for all of you who are listening. So immense gratitude to Mr. Dennis Holland for taking the time with us here today. Lots of fantastic takeaways as usual, but I'll leave it to you to pick out which ones are the takeaways that mean the most to you, and let's get right into the episode. And hear the episode here at episode 77 with amateur scout of the Dallas Stars, Dennis Holland. All right, here we are. Welcome back to another episode of Up My Hockey. Today, I have on Dallas Stars amateur scout, Dennis Holland. Dennis, thanks so much for being here today.
You're welcome. No, I'm glad to be here and excited to talk with you and see where we go with this.
Yeah, let's talk a little hockey, right? Talk a little hockey. I know from a player standpoint, there's scouts in the crowd. I mean, it's always an interesting thing, especially going up from the junior ranks. Back when I was going through and back when you were going through, there wasn't really much idea of like what scouts were necessarily even looking for. You know, we assumed they were looking for goals and assists, and everyone was trying to get their name in the score sheet. And I know for me now, I mean, looking back, I mean, there is some truth to that, but there's also a lot of falsity in that as well. Can you maybe we'll just start there, actually, just with a message to young players right off the bat is like, when they're focused on this results of getting their name in the score sheet, should that be the end all and be all for these 17-year-old players that are wanting to get noticed by scouts like yourself?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. If you're putting points on the board, obviously you're doing something right and you're getting the opportunity. I mean, I think the game has changed a lot in the last, 10, 15 years, whatever. Points are mostly generated on the power play nowadays. I mean, it's tough to generate a lot of 5-on-5 opportunities, goal scoring. We're talking about drafting. We talk about even in the bantam draft, you're talking about the young kid playing with older kids, maybe not getting an opportunity. I mean, for what I do, I'm watching a 17-year-old kid possibly just coming into the Western Hockey League or just coming into the BC Junior Hockey League, maybe not getting that opportunity on the power play that they've had for 10 years in minor hockey. And now how do you keep the positive? And you're like, I'm only going to get seen if I get points. Well, that's sort of the rub. I go to a game, I understand that guy may not get the opportunity. He may not see, the first power play. He might only get the last 15 seconds of a power play. So points are important, but they're definitely not the be all, right? So it's sort of that happy medium where you want to get opportunities, you want to generate opportunities, but goalies are good. Scores aren't as, when me and you used to play, it used to be 7-5, 8-4. Those were some of the nights. Now it's 2-1, 3-2, 4-1. The goals aren't there as plentiful.
Right. So for that player, I think that's a great point you make. The top of the top are usually in that spot. I mean, we're talking the first rounders. Generally, they're the guys that are now already on the power play. They've for whatever reason that they've earned that opportunity and now they're playing. What about the guys that aren't? They're a rookie in the WHL. Let's say the WHL is an older league now, as is the BCJHL and some of these other leagues around North America. And you're fighting for spots with guys that have been there 2, 3, 4 years. And a lot of times when the culture is right on a team, you just don't step into that role, right? You kind of have to earn that role a little bit. So what is the message to players that maybe feel like they want that opportunity or maybe feel they need that opportunity? They don't have it yet, but they still want to put their best foot forward. Like how do they go about their business?
Well, I think it's a lot to do with attitude. I mean, you look at, Joe Pavelski for us at 37, still the first guy on the ice working on deflections and net front opportunities. I think just going about your business. I mean, I think at the end of the day, and we're all the same, we all want to get to that end result tomorrow. It's a process. It's learning, it's listening, it's watching the older players. It's doing extra stuff. It's no different than taking pucks around the wall, defenseman going around the net, snapping that first pass to the guy on the wall. Those are all little things that add up to big things. And we're in the world now is we want instant success. We want the answer tomorrow, right now, and we can't wait till tomorrow. We can't wait till next week or next year. We want to be on the power play tomorrow. It's just a process. I think you need to work on your shot. You have to work on net front. You got to work, take extra shots. It's one of those things where I think coaches, they see that stuff. They're not blind to guys working on their game and trying to get better. And if somebody goes down with an injury, they go, you know what? John has been working real hard at his shot. He's been working extra with rebounds. I'm going to give him a chance. He looks like he may have an opportunity here. So I think it's just one of those things where you have to have patience. You have to have the commitment to continue believing in what you do and keep working on your trade to get better at it.
And I think like the other step of that, which I think players, especially younger players, are unaware of. I know I was like, not only are those habits that you're talking about make you more successful as a player, they allow the coaching staff and the people that are responsible for your ice time to start believing in you, right? To start believing in the process that you're willing to go through to get better. But they're also the ones that are answering the phone calls from people like you. I assume you got a guy that you're interested in that's 17 years old, maybe isn't on the power play. You're interested in him. You like what you see in his game. You probably call that guy up and say, hey, what do you see? Like, what do we got with this guy? And now that coach is able to honestly go to bat for you and saying, I like what I see here. I mean, he's professional in his approach. He goes to bat every day. He plays the game the right way. I think he's going to project really well. Like, is that not the truth? Like, you do make those phone calls, correct?
We really do. We really do. I mean, you get the odd coach that pumps up every tire. Everyone's a great player. Everybody's a good player. And you get to know those guys. You're like, well, I'm not going to call that guy. I know my answer. But I would say to you, most often than not, they give you an honest truth. They're like, hey, bad work habits, practice doesn't go real well, negative or whatever it might be, or the opposite. It'd be like, you know what? I know he only got 8 goals on the season, but this guy works. He comes, he's getting better. His shot's improving. Like, this guy is on the verge of being a good offensive player at our level, and then maybe onto the pro ranks. So, I know a few even trainers. Hey, what's his work ethic like? What do you see? Is we're just trying to get an insight. I only get a snapshot. I only get 60 minutes of what he might be. Coaches get him every day. Trainers get him every day. You're trying to build a bit of a full-rounded picture of these young men, because really they're just young men, right? They're still learning. They're trying to figure out who they are and what they want to be. And it's a tough setting to grind it out. A lot of these guys are first time away from home, so maybe homesick a little bit, whatever it might be. So we're trying to pick a little thing from everybody. I'll talk to the kid, I'll talk to the coach. Maybe I get different answers. Then you're like, okay, what is the kid not believing in the coaching? So it's a process. I mean, it's from July, August, September, right all the way into May if they playoffs and stuff. So
I like how you talk about with the trainer there, because really, you and I both played enough hockey games to know, like, the people who know the players the best are probably the trainers, because even at the pro level, right, you kind of have a little bit of when the coach is in the room, let's put it that way, right? So, like, to really be your full, true, authentic self in front of the coach, so you're probably not giving that to the coach all the time unless you're real comfortable in the environment you're in. But the trainer, he kind of sees everybody. So, I mean, that is a great person to talk to, because you start to understand a little bit more about the character, how they treat the people that are working with the team. Those types of questions, I'm sure, are important to you. And because character, like that makeup of that player, I call it kind of the person behind the player, has to become relevant, I think. Well, I guess at any round. How much do you guys dig in on that with the person behind the raw ability?
Well, I mean, we really do. I mean, we're a $1 billion industry now. I mean, we only get 7 picks. all very important. We're the lifeblood of our organization. Now, you don't make a good pick, you pick a bad person. That trickles into other areas. So no, we dig into as much of the off ice as we do watching on ice. I mean, it translates. You see an honest guy competes, doesn't give up on plays, usually are pretty good people off the ice. But like we say, we try to turn over every rock and see what comes out of it. And usually when you get to the point of the Western Hockey League or the BC Junior Hockey League, I'm very fortunate. There's usually mostly good people, good players. I think by that stage, the guy that doesn't want to play as hard, they get weaned out pretty quickly. So we're very fortunate. We're dealing with the best athletes in the world in hockey at that age. So it's a fun system for us right now. For me, especially when you can be in the ground floor on a young man that nobody in the world knows about, but you're like, in 5-6 years, the whole world's going to be talking about this kid. It's a very cool experience.
That is fun. We talk about skill, and you and I might even be really good examples of like trying to project what happens at the pro level. Like we already talked about goals and assists, how everybody wants them. There is only really maybe 5-6 guys in a team that are expected to contribute offense on a nightly basis, and we all know how tough it is to fill that spot in an NHL job. So when you're looking at these drafted players, at some point, is it all about a raw ability, like the skill, or are you actually projecting to be like, I think this guy's going to be a solid third line player for us, and we need third line players, so we're going to draft a third line player? Or are you always trying to pick like the highest skill ceiling in that's available for you?
Well, we're not, exactly. And it's that happy medium, right? There's that balancing act. Everybody, obviously you want that top end skill at the end of the day, but you need those other intangibles. You need those grinding, hardworking 6'3", 6'4", 6 feet, up and down wingers, play with pace, go to nets hard, crash and bang in rebounds. Those guys are as important at some nights and maybe in the playoffs, sometimes more important than the other guys, depending on who you're playing. So, I think at the top end of the draft, if we're talking, it's all skill. It's all about getting as much skill as you can. But you start getting farther down in the draft, and then now you start weighing: is this skill guy better or has a better chance of playing, or of maybe this guy that's going to be a great third line guy? Where do you put your eggs in which basket? So there is definitely a time in the draft where you go, you know what, this guy's going to be an NHLer. He's not going to be a first line guy, but he's going to be a productive player and help us win. And at the end of the day, we're about winning. So you take the high end skill early, and then you deke and dive, and you try to figure out what you need a little bit and what will translate to being a good pro.
Yeah, because that's when I've dug in on the draft before, and how difficult it is to actually make the right selection, right? It really is. It's hard to do. If you get 2 or 3 guys out of a draft that play 200 games in the NHL, like, you're doing fantastic as an organization. So with that being said, I think it is interesting, because if you do find a guy that can play in your third line, that's a success. That's a huge success, right? Especially in this day and age when the cap is such an issue. You need these entry level guys to come up and be able to play in whatever role that may be, because it helps that GM figure out how to fit the other pieces in there, right?
100%. And we can't all have 5'11" puck moving defensemen. We can't have 6 of those. It's not just you can't win. You need some size. You need some guys that block shots. You need some guys that clear the front of the net. So you need a little bit of everything at the end of the day. You look at a team that has success. They got a little bit of everything. They got high-end skill. They got some size. They got guys that can move pucks. They got guys that can shut down other teams' top lines. It really is a bit of a puzzle to put it all together at the end of the day.
Where is toughness on your list of intangibles right now? And I ask that just because I think the pendulum has been kind of swinging all over the place with playing heavy, playing hard, how the games played in the regular season versus how the games played in the playoffs. To me, it seems like these players are harder to find. Maybe they're not. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the guys that supply a little bit of that fear to the other team, that knows what they're doing, what you're going to get in a playoff game. They're not going to shy away. They're going to get the job done for you. Is that a harder thing to find these days? And if it is, does it then become more valuable?
Well, I would almost say it's almost obsolete, almost impossible to find that player nowadays. The way the game is played at such a high pace, at such a young age, that player used to get a chance. Coaches used to have a little more time with those players, a little more patience. We don't see many of those guys. If that guy has come up, he's probably has some skill too. I mean, you see that straight guy that has some fear. I mean, there's a few of them left in the NHL, but there's not many of them left. And we don't see many of them at our level anymore. For me, toughness, the word toughness has changed since this is my 20th season scouting now. And the word toughness has a different meaning for me from 20 years ago to today. Toughness back 20 years ago was mean, chop, will fight, will, like you say, put a little bit of fear into somebody. Uh-huh. Toughness now is, will he go to the net? Will he take a little bit of a pounding to bang in a rebound? Will he put his body on the line to block that shot? The word toughness has definitely changed for me since I've started scouting. And saying that the game of hockey in the last 20 years is, it's not the same game that I was scouting 20 years ago as I'm scouting today. Right.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And when I say toughness now too, like I definitely don't even, fighting is almost obsolete, like you say. Yeah. So toughness was definitely correlated with somebody who would drop the gloves and fight. But now, I think it's harder and harder to find somebody that's even going to consistently finish their checks, right? Or consistently, even I guess the easiest one to grab right now in today's day and age would be Tom Wilson. If there's a Tom Wilson in junior, a guy who will hit, a guy who is mean, a guy that will fight if he has to, but can still score. I think there's probably 32 teams in the league that want Tom Wilson on their team. But those players are harder to find as well, are they not?
Oh, 100%. And like I say, they might be the hardest guys to find now. To find that player that has a bit of when he jumps over the ice, they're like, I need to keep my head up because if I put it down, it's going to get knocked off. Very difficult to find that player for sure. It's just because the way they call the game now. If you can find someone, you hold on to him. I don't see Washington moving him anytime soon.
Right. So I guess you said it without saying it, but for these amateur players, if you can add a little bite to your game, right? If that's something that they want to to be around themselves out, if it's part of their personality, and that is something that I'm sure would be drawing scouts' attention.
Well, 100%. I talked to an agent yesterday, and he had a young man that's a big 6'2" guy, doesn't play to his size, and he's like, what can I tell him? I say, just finish checks. Use what your attributes are the best. If the other guy is a better skater and he's using his skating ability to benefit his game, and you're 6'2", you don't have to go out of your way. Just continually finish checks. When you go up against a guy that's 5'10", win that physical battle. Dig in. Dig in. We always where we sit. We can tell if a guy digs in or if he pretends to dig in. There's a guy, he really tried hard. No, he didn't really try hard. I've seen try hard. That isn't trying hard, right? Right. So, it easier said than done to tell somebody consistently finish your check. That is a skill in itself. That is, when you at the end of the night, you're like, that guy paid a price all night. He didn't finish. He didn't miss a check. He kept finishing and finishing and finishing. And I know number 14, the little skill guy, got the game winner but he got it on the back of the other guy that finished checks, and he wore those defensemen down. That was the difference in the hockey game. Sometimes, the Joe fan goes home and they're like, oh boy, that little guy played so well. Or I say little guy, whatever, the skill guy on that team played so well and he won the game. Well, as scouts, we may have a different outcome. We're like, you know what? The big guy threw him on his back, and he kind of willed that team to stay in the game and wore that team down. So it definitely is a skill. It isn't easy to just say, hey, keep finishing your check, because it's a tough thing to do every game in, game out. But we'll take you. I mean, we got to the Stanley Cup Finals here a couple years ago on a lot of those guys. The Blake Comos of the world, finishing. We wore a lot of teams down till they were like, you know what, we're good. So yeah.
Just going to take a short break from our conversation with Dennis to remind you about the Up My Hockey parent group on Facebook. Wherever you are listening to this, whether it be in your car or on a podcast platform or on YouTube, the parent group is available to you on Facebook, assuming you are a parent. And this is speaking to parents. Players, this is not for you. You can follow me on Instagram or YouTube. That is more likely place for you to follow me. But for parents, the Facebook group is an amazing community that you should be a part of. It's over 1,500 families, all supportive parents who want the best for their kids and are helping them navigate this space called hockey. And we get into it all in the group. We talk about successes. We talk about challenges. We share solutions to problems. I talk about mindset-related skills that your players can use to help get them to the next level. It's an amazing group of people. It's all supportive. It's all collaborative. And there is no advertisements. There's no spam. There's no people trying to sell you anything. It's just a group of parents that are finding hockey an amazing sport to play, for their kids to play and develop as people and develop as players. And I'm there to host it and to support that journey. So yeah, get on Facebook if you're not there already. Up My Hockey parent group on Facebook. It's a private group that you need to request to join, and once you're in, you're in. So yeah, get in there today. Facebook. Now back to the interview with Dennis Holland.
I love it. I mean, to bring that full circle back to what we were talking about earlier, as far as a message to younger players who's maybe not on the power play when they want to be and getting the points, like talk about impacting a game. Like you want to be when I'm working with my guys, it's like, how do you impact a game? Like, how did you impact it? Because if the only way you're impacting it is by thinking you have to get a goal or an assist, I mean, that's probably not a great metric to go with, right? Like, and finishing the checks and being competitive and having that competitive spirit is something that you're going to see, and you can impact a game every night that way. I guarantee you.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we had Anton Roussel on our team, and he was a guy that he didn't get many goals, but his work ethic, his drive to get in on the forecheck, his drive to block shots, his drive to, I mean, he was a great antagonizer. He was always talking. He was dragging guys into the battle with him. He was a great person and teammate for us when he played for the Dallas Stars, and those guys are valuable. Those guys that play with that energy, and because like I said, it takes a little bit of everybody and everything to win hockey games and to win consistently.
When you're drafting, 17, 18-year-old players, size is obviously a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal at the Bantam draft, probably a little bit more so because some players haven't gone through puberty yet, and like you don't know what you're going to get. It's easy to fall in love with the guy who's big and strong because he's already big and strong. I imagine that's somewhat similar at the NHL entry draft level, because if you get that big, strong farmer type kid, you just know what you're going to get. Yet you might have somebody that's slight that hasn't really filled out yet. Do you find yourself trying not to fall in love with the big, strong guy right away? Or how do you kind of balance that projection at that age?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the game of drafting in hockey has changed so much in 20 years. I mean, 20 years ago, it was like, you couldn't bring him big enough and big enough and strong enough. You're like, draft him. He's a big, strong guy. I mean, the game has changed now. Size, while it's still prevalent, and we all want the biggest, most skilled player. The 5'11", the 5'8" guy, they're all. I mean, some of the best players in the NHL are the smallest guys in the league, right? But when you look at teams that win consistently, that are around the Stanley Cup, I mean, you talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're not talking about a small little team. Like they were a big, heavy team. The third line was a big, heavy line. Hedman's a big defenseman. So, I mean, our number one goal is to draft, the best player with, and if that is an attribute has size in it, then that's a home run. Because at the end of the day, if a guy 5'11" is the same skill set as a guy 6'5", and they play 7 games against each other, probably the guy 6'5" with the same skill set is probably going to win out, just because he's just a little bigger and stronger than the 5'11" guy, right? So we're trying to balance that. I mean, we drafted Logan Stankoven last year, not a big in stature, but a huge heart. Competitive spirit is off the charts. I mean, we're still hoping to get the biggest, strongest guy, but sometimes the guy with the little dog with the biggest bark sometimes is the better player. So,
right. I want to talk about Logan. I mean, he's a local guy here for us. I mean, I'm in Vernon, and he's playing in Kamloops. What is it like to be a Dallas Stars draft pick? So you did draft him last year. I think he was a second rounder. Is that right? Yeah. So second round pick. Obviously, you had eyes on him a lot last year, as much as you could. After he's been drafted now, what does it look like for a Dallas Stars prospect? Like, are you talking with him? Is the GM? Does anyone talk to him? Like, how does that communication go after you get drafted?
So basically, he kind of gets handed off. So Rich Peverly is our director of, I say hockey operation, but hockey players. And he now is in charge of communication with those guys. He talks with them. We have another strength and conditioning guy, JJ, that will also. So there's sort of a two-headed monster there. We have our strength and conditioning guy, and then Rich Peverly, who kind of takes over and acts as their, I don't know, I guess parent, but he's sort of he's the Dallas Stars eyes and ears for those guys. He's on communications with them. I say daily, but consistently within the week. JJ will have sent a workout thing with them. He'll have talked to the trainers in whatever team they're playing on. I mean, the game when I got drafted, I mean, I don't even know if I even talked to someone from Detroit for the following year. I mean, you kind of got left on your own, and there was nobody that kind of picked you up and, this is how you need to be a pro, which has totally changed now, where as soon as he's drafted, our guys grab him and say, you know what, we believe you've got the skill set, the foundation to be an NHLer and be a pro. We're just going to pull everything together, and we're going to tighten that up, and we're going to explain to you and help you get to the point you want to get to.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I agree with you. I mean, that's been part of maybe the biggest evolution, I think, in the NHL has been that the evolution of how to treat these prospects, right? That it's not just a commodity, right? This is something that needs to be grown from within and developed from within. And as soon as you get your hands on them, you want your hands on them, because you want to be part of that process. So I think that's great as far as how these guys are getting treated now, and the more communication, I think, the better. Because if you don't know what you don't know, right?
You're right. And I think at the end of the day, there's that, 5 or 10% of the player that really you wouldn't even need to talk to, or they're so good. They know what they're making the NHL, no matter if you do anything with them or not. But that other group, boy, you can turn a guy on, you can turn a guy off from getting an opportunity just by working with them, talking with them, listening to them, trying to figure out what they need, where maybe their headspace is at. You look at some organizations, you go, you know what, they drafted really well, but did they draft really well, or have they developed really well? There's that fine line. the drafting group, which is me and the Rich Peverly group, has to work a bit in unison to be successful, so the Dallas Stars can continue having players each year step in at minimum salary, that then you can have a $10 million player on your team and you can have a superstar. If you don't have those young kids coming, it's the death of your organization, because you can't sign those guys as free agents. No, they're not around.
Right. I was actually just going to ask you that. I think that's a great question. And a great point, that so you have eyes on these guys from 16, 17, projecting. You're doing all the work. You're in the meetings and talks on draft day. The kid gets drafted. Now you're on to the next draft class, but you've seen this guy for so long, right? And you have an idea of what he can become or what you think he can become. Yet you're not involved in the player development aspect. And so there's that handoff there. There's that handshake. Have there been times where, I don't know what the right way to put it is, but where you kind of want to be more involved in the development aspect because you think you maybe can see something, or is that the phone call maybe you have with Rich and say, hey, maybe try this, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely. I mean, we're a team at the end of the day. I mean, there's lots of communication back and forth. It'll be, hey, Rich will phone and say, hey, you were at the game last night. How did Logan play? And then you go through the process and you're like, okay, well, I talked to him yesterday and this is what he's dealing with or whatever. And I'll be like, everything looks great to me. Just, he needs to keep the process. He's got to get stronger, So it's definitely a bit of a dance. It's a bit of at the end of the day, we're a Dallas Star. He's a Dallas Star. We're just trying to get everybody to that next level. So, it's not, people are like, oh, did you draft that guy? Our group drafted that guy. It wasn't me. It was me maybe identifying a guy, but then it's, a crossover guy coming over and confirming, and somebody else coming in and also confirming, and then getting him in the proper spot in our list. It's not just me saying, hey, yeah, let's draft that guy. And they're like, okay, yeah, Dennis likes that guy. It doesn't happen like that.
Right. I had a discussion with Ken, as you know, current GM of the Edmonton Oilers, and we talked a little bit about that process with him. Like he said, as a GM, he would definitely have lots of eyes on the first round pick for sure, and he would have a pretty big say in that. Maybe even the second round pick. But he said once it gets to the 5th, 6th, 7th round, he can't see everybody, right? So he's relying more on the area scouts that way. Is that where you kind of dust off the gloves and get ready to go to bat at draft day, kind of in those positions where you really want to go to bat for your guy?
It really is. And that's where we get our money, to be honest with you. That's where I earn my salary. I mean, we all can find the, Connor McDavids of the world and these guys. But when you watch a good franchise and you're like, that guy was drafted in the 5th round, that guy was drafted in the 7th round, that guy was signed as a free agent. That's when you go, okay, that scout is doing something proper. He's doing something right. He sees something. So yeah, that's if we hit on one of those guys, you've done your job for that year. And like I said, if you can find 3 guys that can play in a draft year, you're doing a pretty consistent job. It's kind of like baseball. If a guy hits 2 for 4, hits 1 for 3, and he's hitting it every day and he's hitting consistently, boy, you're pretty happy if you get some consistency.
Right. Speaking of which, I think that's a great lead into to what has really been the cornerstone of your organization. He wears the C right now, and it's Jamie Benn. You talk about a 5th rounder that can change an organization's, outlook. I mean, he's the guy, right? And so he's a Western. He comes from the West. I know you've been a Western amateur scout for a long time. You can draft Jamie Benn in the 5th round, who ends up being up for the Hart Trophy. Wears the C, one of the best power forwards in the game. You can't just say enough about that, picking that spot in that late. Was that somebody that you had eyes on a lot? And was that somebody that you were going to bat for?
He was. It was an interesting season that year. I was only in my second or third. I think in my second year of scouting, and he played in Victoria, so you don't get as many viewings. And Len Berry was the owner of the team at the time. I played junior against Len. I kind of grew up, played minor hockey against Len, and he came into Salmon Arm. They came through Salmon Arm, and I actually stood with Len, and he goes, "Dennis, this this Ben guy's a pretty good player. You should keep an eye on him. I'm like, okay, thanks, Len. You know, and away he went. Watched him a couple more times. Skating wasn't great. You could see he had an NHL shot. He had a bomb of a shot, but skating was weak. And then after Christmas, he kind of took off. He didn't get picked for the World Junior A Challenge. You know, he had 40 goals and about 85 points. I think he was in the top, whatever. But again, playing on the island, wasn't getting viewed. And I kept going, he's a good player. Like, I'm not sure why he's not getting any love by anybody. Like, I'm seeing NHL attributes. Skating's got to come, but if it comes, there's going to be something there. And then I got to a point in the season where I said to Les Jackson, who was running our group at the time, and I said, Les, I got to have you come in. Like, I'm talking about a later round guy, and Les was usually at that point was worried about the first 2 rounds, the high end picks. I said, I'm still early in my career here. I think there's something here. Can you just come out? If you make a swing, can you go to the island and watch this kid for me? Goes through the island. He picks up the phone right after the game. He goes, we've got something here. You've got something. This guy looks like a player. And so then I went back again, and I went back like in March, and I think I was the only guy in the building, or there was 2 scouts in the building. I'm like, I don't like, I like, because usually if there's somebody of interest and there's a little bit of life, there's scouts in the building, there's head scouts in the building. You're like, okay, we better figure something out here. But had no real interest. And yeah, I mean, it was one of those, the next year he came back, he went to Victoria again. He wanted to play with his brother at college. Didn't work out. Brother didn't go in. Kelowna talked him to going into the Western Hockey League. When he stepped into the Western Hockey League, I went, oh my gosh, we got something here. Like this, his skating is improving. He was fighting a little bit. Like, I'm like, there's some intangibles besides some skill here. Like, and then it's like, where do you think you're going to fit him? And I'm like, good third line player, maybe. You're like, I'm in my mind, I'm going, I think we might have something, but I'm like, I don't want to still early in my career. I don't want to start doing too much. But and he just got better, and then he played for Team Canada, and then he went into the American League and was successful there. And I'm like, we got a top 2 line center or top 2 line player here. Never did I, perceive him to be our captain and sort of the face of our franchise the last few years, and led the league in scoring one year. I mean, it was one of those things that it really was a good thing for our franchise in the 5th round. We John Klingberg's another guy that we drafted in the 5th round. So those are the kind of guys. If you want your team to be successful and have some longevity in winning, you need to hit a few of those late round picks.
Yeah, I looked up Jamie. He went from Victoria to Kelowna, which is maybe interesting because not many guys do that, meaning the BCHL to the WHL. And then he ended up being a World Junior guy, and then he went straight to the NHL for that season, if I'm reading his Hockey DB right. So he spends the entire year with Dallas in 2009-2010. And then he also plays for the Texas Stars in the AHL, but that's only for the playoffs. So I assume that he played the full year with Dallas, right? Makes the team out of camp, which I would assume would be a surprise for a 5th rounder to even do that. And then he lit up the AHL playoffs. Like, I can't even believe his numbers there. Like 26 points, 24 games, 14 goals. I think second on the team had 17 points, and he was obviously a 20-year-old rookie there. So just smashed it in the AHL. And that's something that a lot of players don't do, right? These higher guys oftentimes don't put up numbers like that yet because they're a 1st rounder or a 2nd rounder. They still kind of get the let's see what you're like in the NHL. But he obviously proved himself that he was good enough for the AHL as well. Do you remember that camp at all for him? I know you probably weren't there, but was he projected, do you think, to make that team, or did he earn his spot coming in there and winning a job?
Well, we had rookie camp that year in Traverse City, and he came in. And he lit up the rookie tournament. Him and James Neal played on that same team. and they were a 2-man wrecking crew. And I think going into this season, it was like, well, he's going to have a good year, American Hockey League, get his feet under him. And he was a man amongst boys in that tournament. And they're like, well, we'll maybe give him a few games, we'll give him some exhibition. And he was dialed in right from day one of rookie tournament. And it was one of those where you're not sending me down. I don't know what you're thinking is, but you're not sending me down. You're not going to do it. And he, like I say, he earned his spot. He wasn't given a spot. And it was one of those, because I think what really happened, to be honest with you, high-end baseball player, never trained in the summer, was playing baseball, and all of a sudden at about 17, gave up baseball, and I say gained some muscle, but yeah, he grew into his body, and it was just like, oh, here we go. And I think and then all of a sudden, as you know, you get a little stronger, the confidence, your whole mindset goes, you know what? I'm going to take it to the net. I'm just going to drop a shoulder. I'm a big, strong guy. I'm going to take it to the net. And then that's what he did. He just went like that. Once he started working out and decided he wanted to be a full-time hockey player, he took games over.
So when you saw him then at 17, he wasn't the 6'2", 215 guy he is right now then? Like, do you remember what he was from a stature standpoint at that age?
I think he probably was, look back, he was maybe 6'2", 175, 78. I don't even know if he was 180 pounds. Right. He wasn't now, but he was mean. Like he fought a couple nights in when I was in there. He stood up for some older guys on his team. I was like, wow, okay, this guy isn't scared. You put a little muscle on him, he's gonna be a bit of a handful for guys. Right. I think he might have been pound for pound the toughest guy in the Western Hockey League his last year. Nobody wanted to fight him.
Oh, that's crazy. That's cool. And those are the kind of guys we were talking about earlier, right? And maybe like from a real power forward standpoint, like a Jerome McGinley, a Jamie Benn, like those guys that they're not fighting, but they're tough. And when they need to fight, they can. They're going to bring your team into the fight every night, right? Like they're just leading that way. And Jamie Benn is one of those guys. I think, he's a power forward of his generation, really. He's been that for you guys, and he's been a fun player to watch. With regards to the leagues now, and I get this question a lot from parents, and it's generally like the players that know that they want to go and get their education, like they know 100% they're going BCHL, and the ones that, not that they think education is secondary, because the WHL and the CHL in general is a good great education package. But sometimes you get the guys that are more pro-oriented. They want to get there a little bit quicker. I think that they go to the WHL. Is it hard to project? Like, how do you project? You see somebody, a 17-year-old in the BCHL, and you see a 17-year-old in the WHL. Are you expecting that player to have more impact in the BCHL than they are in the WHL? Or how do those leagues compare to you?
Well, I would say to you, if we're talking straight draft, if you're playing as a 17-year-old in the BC Junior Hockey League, that guy better be a good hockey player. He better play on the power play. He may or be first penalty kill. He has to have impact, because it's like going from the NHL to the American League. There definitely is a bit of a jump between size and strength of the Western Hockey League to the BC Junior Hockey League. I will give the guy that plays in the Western Hockey League a little more rope, just because he might not get the opportunity to play as much as the guy in the BC Junior Hockey League. Now, at the end of the day, I am just trying to evaluate, no matter the player in general, no matter if he's playing Minnesota High School, BC Junior Hockey League, Western League. I'm just trying to project him out 5 years. Can he play in the NHL? So am I scouting differently? Yes, in the sense you need to do more in the BC Junior Hockey League, but in the sense of I'm just looking at where he is, where he can get to, what his limitations are, what's his upside, what is his ceiling. That doesn't change.
Right. Yeah, because I would assume, I mean, if Jamie Benn had 42 goals in the WHL his draft year in 53 games, he probably wouldn't have been a fifth round pick, right? I mean, just to use that kind of just metric, right? Like they aren't the same animal. Is when it comes to draft day, and this is just me being curious now. Say you got a USHL player or a BCJHL player. Do those leagues kind of cancel each other out as far as what like if you're looking at what a goal means in the BCJ to what a goal means in the USHL, or are they pretty much equal currency?
I would say to you probably a little bit tougher to score in the USHL. I mean, I think those, if you look at those scores, they are usually a little bit lower, a little bit tougher to score at that level than the BC Junior Hockey League. I mean, I would say to you, we talk, the USHL is a little more college sort of tempo. They play more up tempo. They play with more pace. It's more dumping, running around, getting in there on the forecheck. BC Junior Hockey League's a little more of a pro type game, a little more of a puck possession type game. Both great levels, great opportunities to get better. It's a great level. Both are great levels for a younger guy to get some ice time, because sometimes it's tough to get ice time at the Western Hockey League level. Right. At the end of the day, you want to play. If you're sitting up in the stands and not playing, and the other guy's playing in the BC Junior Hockey League and he's playing 22 minutes a night and getting power play and getting this and getting opportunities and learning, which guy is probably getting better? The guy that's getting ice time. So at the end of the day, the most important thing is getting ice time and getting an opportunity to improve and show what you can do.
That's a great point. I wasn't going to ask that question, but it just came to mind because that's another thing parents ask a lot of the times. Like, is it better to be, let's say it's 16, maybe the Portland Winterhawks want your kid to be there. Maybe won't be on the power play, probably won't be, limited minutes, but he's in that environment, that WHL environment. And he's, surrounded by these big, strong players, and he's starting to get his feet wet and maybe be ready maybe potentially more ready for his draft year. Or should that player play the midget or play BCHL where he's going to have a more prominent role? Like, if you were the parent of that child, like, is there one way that you would suggest more often than other?
If it was me, it would all be on the mental state of that player. I think how the maturity of that player. Can that guy go to Portland and sit in the stands and not play on the power play and keep his focus and keep the intensity and that desire to play? Is he better off to play midget at home and play? I think it really has to do with the maturity of the player more so than maybe the physical attributes. How mentally, because that's a tough year for a lot of players, is that 16-year-old year. You're not getting drafted yet. You're old enough to play junior, but you're still young, so you're not getting a whole bunch of ice time. That's a real difficult age for those players, I think, as much mentally as it is physically, because like you say, you kind of get lost that year what you should do. But I really think it's more comes down to the maturity of your player that you're worried about.
Take another short break from my discussion with Dennis to promote my Peak Potential Hockey Project. Lots of the things we're hearing today from Dennis, the strength and weakness builder, the mental agility, the intangibles required to make it to the next step. It's amazing how frequently these topics come up in these conversations. Sometimes I guide them there, and sometimes the personality that I'm speaking to takes us there on their own. And that's why I've created the Peak Potential Hockey Project. It's to really focus in on some of these areas where players can direct their attention, work on their self-awareness, and become better athletes. There's nothing like it out there on the market. It is a mindset course for hockey players that has got nothing but rave reviews from the people who have taken it. And now there is plenty of people who have taken this course. Teams have taken this course from the BCHL levels all the way down to the 2009 level. Individual players have taken this course from the ages of 9 all the way up to 19. And everybody is having
phenomenal success and phenomenal takeaways with this course. I'm really proud of it. I'm really excited about it. It rotates through every 5 weeks. It includes coaching calls with me, is why it's 5 weeks, because there's 1 week where I just take a break and I promote the next course. So we're rolling through 5-week cycles. There's always time to register for the next course. And in the 4 weeks, you are going to get some really good stuff. We talk about mental agility. We talk about 10x in your development. We talk about extreme ownership. We also talk about growth mindset for hockey players, which is what I call becoming bulletproof. So these 4 weeks all are about different mindset topics, all of which are immensely valuable to hockey players, all of which are immensely valuable to you away from the rink as well, to help you be successful in whatever it is you want to do. So that's my blurb for the Peak Potential Hockey Project. You can sign up for it on my website, www.upmyhockey.com, under services, I believe. You can get the guided course with me, or you can do the self-paced course and do it on your own. Whichever one you prefer, they're both there. They're both ready to go. I highly recommend you take it if you are serious at all about your hockey and want to take your game and your development to the next level. Rock and roll with the Peak Potential Hockey Project. Now back to my episode with Dennis Holland. Right. Some people really, really are proponents of, the puck touches, and you want the confidence associated with results, right? Like I want my guy to have 40, 50 goals. And then, I don't think there is one recipe for any player. I mean, Jerome McGinley came to mind, who I spoke to on the podcast here, and it was a peer of mine that I played against with in the WHL. His 16-year-old year, he was a healthy scratch numerous times, right? He played 40-some games for that Kamloops Blazer team. Here's a future Hall of Famer, right? And, he said it was a tough year for him for sure, but it was also a year that he wouldn't have changed because he understood the system better. He was around these future NHL guys, and he figured out what it took to win. He wasn't playing on the power play, and he was healthy scratching in the stands, but for him, it worked. I'm not saying that would work for everyone, but it's just an interesting example because everyone wants something, like you said yesterday, and a lot of these players, they want to be on the power play now. And you have a guy like Jerome McGinley who can't get in the lineup in the WHL. That kind of says something. And I'm kind of the proponent of saying, if you can be at the dance, go to the dance.
I agree. At the end of the day, a lot of times players play below their level because they want that success. And a lot of times that just breeds bad habits. It breeds, lack of energy, lack of pace, lack of energy, lack of desire, because it's easy. It's just too easy. I would agree with you. Play at the best level you can play, but again, you have to balance that with the maturity of that player, that it doesn't be a detriment to their desire and their energy and their work ethic and their focus, what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I wanted to touch on your career, Dennis, because you're a hell of a goal scorer, and I don't know if those listening, we move on in our lives and we do different things, and then people don't really know where we came from. You had 82 goals, I think. I don't have it in front of me right now. In the WHL, you were a 100-point player as a 16-year-old in the BC Junior League. Like you said, a third-round draft pick. That's a lot of points. And you and Troy Mick, another guy that played here locally, obviously had some chemistry. What about your junior? What about your junior career do you remember most fondly? And that 82 goal season, that must have been, I would assume, that's high up there on the list.
It is. I think probably the thing I look back most fondly about playing junior hockey was actually playing with my best friend Troy Mick. We knew each other at 4 years old. Went to school. He lived 2 blocks from where I grew up. And, at 16, he went off to Merritt to play, and we regrouped together again back in Portland at that end of that year. But up to, we played Adams together and Pee Wee together and Bantam together. And then, midget a little bit back and forth because we were playing on different, he had gone to play in Merritt. But yeah, playing with my best friend probably at the end of the day was the most cool thing and the best memories I had. And then we played on the same line. When I had success, he had success. So we had good days together. We had our bad days together. So, it was a funny year. My 82-year-old goalie actually had a bad start to the season. I think I was kind of one of the guys coming in. You're like, you might lead the league in scoring, and expectations. You're like, okay, I got to get going. And I think I put maybe a little bit too much pressure early, and kind of had a bad. Like say the first 10 games, I don't even know how many goals I had, but early in the year, I scored 7 goals against Kamloops. My mom and dad had come into the game from Vernon. And everything just clicked. Troy had 7 assists that night on all my goals. It was from there on, everything I seemed to shoot that year seemed to trickle through a leg, would banked off something and into the net. It was a magical run for me, a magical run for our team. We went to the league final, lost out to an amazing Swift Current team. But it was a great 19-year-old year. It was a great finish to my junior career for sure. Like I said, it feels like yesterday. I say I got such great friends still that played with me and me and Troy on that team. As you know, the bonds you make in dressing rooms, and you go to war with guys. You don't lose that friendship. You see them 5 years later, and you pick up like you hadn't seen them, 10 minutes ago.
No, I love that. Yeah, no, for sure. So 167 points. I think you led the league in goals by 12, if my memory's serving correctly. And you were ahead of obviously some big names that went on to long careers, one of which was Stu Barnes, who was only a year younger than you. I never led the WHL in scoring, but obviously I was fairly successful there myself. And there were some guys that maybe weren't as successful than me that went on to longer NHL careers, as you can stake the same claim. What about if you could rewind, or what do you think was the thing that stopped you from having an impact in the NHL?
I think, and I say that year, I remember Mike Modano played in PA that year. He broke his. We were going back and forth that year. He broke his wrist in the All-Star game in Brandon, and at that point, it was a free walk for me to win that league scoring. But I think for me, you look back, my skating was only average. We played in the same Civic Arena. Rink wasn't big. My mind was so good. I could sense, I could feel where pucks and plays were going, who was going to be open. I didn't have to skate. If I look back now, I would have worked on my skating more. I think at the end of the day, for me, it was my skating that held me back. It wasn't my skill set. It wasn't my desire. Opportunities at the pro level that I'd done at junior and minor hockey. And at that point, I hate to say a little bit too late, but that era was now more clutch and grab, hook and hold. Like you got a 1-goal lead in the third period. You weren't losing it because nobody was letting go of your stick around your waist.
Right.
So, I would, if I look back, my skating was what held me back, but I didn't have to skate. I was good enough. And I needed somebody to say, hey, you're good now, but if you want to be good at the next level, we need to do this. We got to work on your weakness. And you work with young guys. Everybody wants to work on their best trait, right? Let's work on toe drags, coach. It's not like let's work on my backwards skating or let's work on my crossovers. That's no fun because I'm not good at it, right? and that's how you get better, is by working on your weakest skill. And that's a skill in itself, going, you know what? I know I need to work on that, and that's what I'm going to work on, even though I want to do something else.
That's great advice. It's funny. I got a course they call the Peak Potential Project, and in week 2, I talk about development and 10x in your development. It's a little program I call your Strength and Weakness Builder, because I say, as an NHLer, or even a pro athlete or a junior athlete, you really need to be good at something. Like you do. You need to have a strength, right? Something that you bring to the table every night that makes your team better, and that's going to be whatever you're best at. But there's going to be something that maybe will stop you from getting to that next level, right? And there's that weakness. So if we're not working on both, I say, like in some deliberate way, you're selling yourself short. So I love that you talk about that, because we usually want to do something that we're good at because it's fun, it's easy. The thing that's hard for us is usually the stuff that people don't want to lean into. And if you can be professional in your approach with that stuff as a young player, and you're not even a young player, even as pro players, right? Like, guys, stop working on that stuff. If you can continue to work on that, you're gonna have more opportunity. You're gonna have a longer career. So I'm glad you brought that up. I want to talk about chemistry a little bit too, because I think it corresponds obviously with you and Troy, because you guys were both super successful together. I've seen it, I've felt it, right? Personally. The Sedins is another massive example of that. Like, those two guys were better together than they would have been separately, for sure, right? How do you handle that? Or is there ever a scenario where you're like, geez, I saw this guy together with this person, and something that comes to my mind, I know I'm all over the place here, but was Mark Dael and Frank Banham. And I'm sure you would have scouted them potentially, or maybe that was before you. They were awesome in junior together. Frankie actually had a little bit of a cup of coffee in the NHL and did a good job there too with Anaheim, scored some goals there. Mark Dael was a 3rd-round pick, I think. Last guy to get over 160 points, I think, in the WHL. They were this dynamic together, but they kind of both had sort of struggling pro careers. I always thought, like, why wouldn't a team just like bring one of them in and just see, if you could rekindle that? Because some guys are just better with other players. Is that something that you think about as a scout, or is it just something you just knew that you had as a player?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you just kind of knew it as a player. You just you play better with certain people because whatever their skill set, or the way they read the game, however they see the game is the same as you. So you're like, if I'm a left winger right now, this is where I would be, and you're like, that's where Troy was, because that's where I thought I would be, right? So I didn't have to look. I just passed a puck. So you save that half split second.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see guys have success with other guys, I think it's because they see the play the same way. They go through that process at almost identical moments in different parts of the ice. But I agree with you. And you know what? I think one of the reasons that teams don't, those two guys had success together in the Western League or in the American Hockey League, is because a lot of times you kind of get lost, because if they were good in junior together, now they go to pro. Well, I saw them good in junior. The pro guys didn't see them in junior. They don't even remember. They don't know that. Right? So it's one of those, unless an amateur guy looks up and goes, hey, why are these two guys not having success? And the light bulb goes on and say, hey, why don't we give this an opportunity? It's probably not going to happen. And a lot of times, to be honest with you, we're so busy working on this draft and kids at the underage, to keep an eye on the American League and stuff is almost impossible. So I think a lot of times, like you said, you're probably right. I'm not sure why that, though, when you get two guys that are working so well, let's put them together in the American League. Let's see what they can do. And if it works in the American League, why don't we put them in the NHL together, Right. So I think it's one of those, sometimes maybe gets lost in the cracks of amateur to pro. Yeah.
Yeah. No, interesting. A little bit of insider trading there. So maybe there is a little secret sauce there.
Maybe.
All right. I told you we'd keep you for only an hour. I have a parent group that I always, like, if I'm going to interview somebody, I say, hey, do you have any questions for this person? Is there something of interest? And so I'll ask a couple of questions from them, if you don't mind, Dennis, just to close, because there's some good questions here. And we haven't talked about one of the topics, which is goaltenders. I have a goalie son now too, and I know it's a whole different world. Like, I played goalie once I retired from pro hockey, because I thought that'd be a fun thing to kind of pick up. And I just realized that, wow, like, you're playing the same game, but it's a completely different sport. Like, it's massively different position, and it's obviously a different position to scout too. So Emma Taylor from my group asked, what do you look for in a goalie, not only on the ice, but off the ice?
Well, I think one of the most important things is confidence, that I say swagger, but that goalie that plays at the top of the paint, that looks like they're in charge. It looks like they're sort of the captain of the D zone. I think it's really important to have a feeling that they're relaxed, but they're engaged. I mean, you see lots of goalies that are frantic and flailing, and every shot seems to be a circus, and it's, then the rebound comes out, and then but they maybe make that save also, and they're, at the end they're like, oh my gosh, you played so well. Well, a lot of the reasons they had to play so well because part of their process of not controlling rebounds and stuff. So really look for a goalie that is under control, that sometimes less is more, plays a calm game, gets to places quickly because they're reading and reacting to that play, not overplaying pucks. But yeah, I also had a goalie's son. I mean, I went from scoring a bazillion goals to a guy that now wants to stop, but boy, that's a stressful position as a goalie parent. I don't think I was ever as stressed as I was playing in 10 years professional as I was watching him play. But yeah, I mean, I would say calm, cool, composed, in charge. Those words would come to mind.
Awesome. I'm going to have two follow-ups on that. One is size. The size of the goalie position in direct opposite of what the player sizes. I mean, player sizes seem to be coming down and goalies seem to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I actually had one conversation with one scout who I guess I won't say because maybe it's insider trading, but they said that they actually will not scout a goalie that is under 6'2". Like legitimately aren't allowed to look at them. To me, that's like, oh, it kind of rips my heart out because I mean the athletics, 6-foot goalie, I think should have a chance. But is that like the direction of the position? Do you really put a big emphasis on size with that position now?
And I'm going to say one of our goalies, Kadobin, he's 5'11", played in Saskatoon, highly athletic, highly competitive, so I mean those guys play. I mean, at the end of the day, the guys shoot the puck so well. If you're not covering corners and you're showing net, they're scoring. I mean, we don't have a size requirement, but definitely you mean my brother played at 5'8". The age of small goalies is come and gone. I mean, I think you look at there is still some really good goalies in that, Carter Hart's an excellent goalie. There's some really good goalies in that 6 feet, 6'1" range. That again, I talk about having great hockey sense, getting to spots quick, not overcommitting. But you better be at a high level in all those categories if you're going to play in the NHL. I mean, there are lots of good young goalies that play junior that aren't 6'5". But if you're going to play in the NHL, the best league in the world, it's going to be tough to be 5'11" to play. Right.
With regards to you said calm, cool, and collected, and my other follow-up question with the goalies, there's some competitive spirit, obviously, that you need to have as a goalie. You have to have some fire, and everyone is wired a little bit differently. Do you mind when a goalie lets in something and he smashes a stick off the post, maybe skates in the corner, comes back and resets, or would you rather see just like composure the whole time? Like, is there an air that you want to see, or do you allow a little bit of room for some of these more fiery personalities?
Well, to be honest with you, I like watching after a bad goal is scored, and it may be a bad goal. Maybe it's just a goal off his own defenseman and goes in, and it's maybe not a bad goal. It's a fluky goal. I like watching the next 4 or 5 minutes. How does that goalie react? Does he make a big save? Does he look flustered now? Does he go behind the net and make a really good outlet play behind the net to his D-man? Like, how quickly does he move past that? So yeah, sometimes I'm okay if a guy gets a little fiery and the next 5 minutes, it's like, you know what? This guy is saying, you know what? That isn't going to happen again. So I'm okay with a little bit of fire because I think at the end of the day, everybody's their own person. Carey Price is Carey Price, who is, isn't Luongo, who wasn't, Patrick Waugh. You love him on your team, a fiery competitor, right? So, yeah, I mean, I can't say, if a goalie shows emotion, I cross him off my list. No.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's like in that moment afterwards, there's going to be something. I mean, some guys skate to the corner, some guys spray water in their face. I mean, everyone has a different thing there. Someone might slam their post, but it's like, what happens after that? Right? Because is that a reset mechanism for the goalie? Does he come back out and still show composure in the net and make the big save for the team, or is he lost? Right. And I think that's where sometimes these fiery guys, if they can't recover from that, then they're in the wrong position. So I agree with what you're saying there. I think that's there is room for some personalities, but you got to make sure you're ready to stop the next puck. I guess that's the most important thing.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So we'll go with one more here. Which is kind of an interesting one where I'm at. We covered it a little bit, but I'm just going to give Scott Zuliniak. That's a nice Ukrainian name right there. I know I made that one wrong, but he says, what is more important when factoring talent, raw ability or mentality and attitude towards the game and the team? Of course, a mix of both is key, I'm sure, but I always wonder if the scouts just take snapshots of raw ability and then dig into the person after.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, I think that raw talent, it grabs you, right? I think at the end of the day. But I think we try to get to, like, it's not like we go to one hockey game and all we're like, we're going to take that guy. We go back and back and back again. So a lot of times the raw talent guy grabs you, but sometimes it's the other guy. You're like, you know what? This guy just keeps making great play after great play. You know, Bergeron keeps making great plays. He's maybe doesn't have the high end size and talent, but he keeps making good plays. So, I mean, I think raw talent grabs you initially. I mean, it's like anything, right? You see that high-end skill. You're like, oh, now does he have that inner drive to get to the front of the net, or is he out on the perimeter the whole time and just waiting for the power play? Right. So it's that process. Okay, has the talent. Does he have the other tools to be successful? You know, yes or no. And then the other point is, like you say, is the guy that has those intangibles, does he have impact? Is that stuff, you know, bring his skill even higher?
Right. My last question is, and it might not be the perfect question for you, just because I know you're not involved in the Bantam draft, you're an NHL amateur scout. But there's a lot of discussion amongst parent groups about where to put your kid to get the best opportunity, right? And the Bantam draft is the first big thing where a lot of families feel that they got to shell out the $30,000 to go to academies so they can get more looks, so they can get the higher draft pick or get recognized. One, like, do you see any correlation between where these younger players are coming from and the type of player that they turn into? Like, is there a program or a league where you're like, oh yeah, I mean, I would send my kid this way because we get all of our best players are from this area? Or are parents making it too big of a deal early on? And do you think, you know, just play or whatever level is local to you, and, you know, and the cream will rise to the top? Like, how do you think that all works out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like I say, I'm probably not the person to ask. Like I say, I don't have that impact on watching those kids on a daily basis. I mean, I actually had a conversation with a parent the other night in an Alberta Junior Hockey League game about that same question. And I personally, for me, I would like to see kids play where they're from, be a little more, you know, play more sports, be a little more developing, an all-around player. But it's very difficult to do that when the other person is on the ice 5 days a week with, you know, coaching that is paid for, that, you know, going to all the high-end tournaments that all the scouts are at. Very difficult for me to say, hey, don't send your kid to that opportunity. Minnesota high school, I like that system in the sense that they play hockey in hockey season, they play football in football season, they play baseball in baseball season. They have a little better, you know, well-rounded group, and sometimes, like I say, this is a discussion for another day. I could sit here for an hour and talk to you about, do we have too much wear and tear on our players? Like 5 days a week, every academy, every tournament. You know, Sweden, they do more training. They don't play as many games. They don't get as many concussions probably because they're not putting themselves into that opportunity, right? So
Right.
it definitely be an interesting roundtable discussion on what exactly is the best fit. And at the end of the day, every player is different, right? So every fit's different.
Right. Yeah, and for you, what you're doing, I mean, you're supposed to find the best players, right? So that's the BCHL, or that's the AJ, or that's the WHL. I mean, you're going to go there and you're going to find them. And I guess that, my message is kind of that. I mean, I don't think you have to chase. It's hard to not want to keep up with the Joneses,
Exactly.
like you said. But there's a path for everyone, and it gets proven over and over again. The Jamie Benns of the world, Kevin Sawyer comes to mind. There's so many stories where, like, who's that player now in Edmonton that used to be a Spokane Chief, was with the Flames? Oh my gosh, didn't get drafted. He went over. He was a podcast guest of mine. Oh, Ryan.
Yes, Derek Ryan. Yeah,
Derek Ryan, right? I mean, what a story that is. To be overseas and playing in Belarus or some third thing there, and now he's an NHL regular at 30. Like, there's so many paths to get there. And I think when these families are thinking about it 7, 8 years old, and they want to play in the brick tournament, and they want to do this and they want to do that, it's like Dennis Holland doesn't know if your kid played in the brick tournament at 17. That doesn't matter to him at all. So I wouldn't worry about that. But anyways, we'll cut it off here. I really, really appreciate your time, Dennis. Unbelievable knowledge, a lot of insight there for parents and players out there. And, I really appreciate your job and what it is you're doing. That's a grind sometimes. I know, going on the road and watching all these games and doing what you're doing, but there's kids that are chasing dreams, and you get to be a part of that. So I know that's a pretty special thing too.
It really is. And like I said, I hopefully something connects with somebody or whatever, and maybe a little bit of knowledge for a young guy moving up the ranks. But no, it's been fun. I love talking hockey. I could talk hockey every day. So
awesome. All right. Well, we'll cut her off. Thanks again for joining us. And maybe we'll do it again one day here.
Sounds good.
Thanks. All right. Thank you so much for sticking with us till the end. Faithful Up My Hockey listener, really appreciate your attention today. And I know you enjoyed the conversation with Dennis. We covered so many great things. I love the takeaways about Jamie Benn, like that Jamie Benn story and how they found him, and there's nobody in the rink watching him, and Dennis is a young scout and he's not sure if he should be behind this guy or not. And lo and behold, a 5th round draft pick ends up becoming the NHL scoring leader in a season, ends up wearing the C, and is the face of the franchise for years to come. Those success stories are great. They happen more frequently than we like to admit. And one of the things that boils down for me from that entire story is the fact that Jamie Benn needed to be on his game when that head scout came through and watched him on the island. Jamie Benn did not know the head scout was in the audience, and he ended up playing the game the right way and got noticed and verified what Dennis had seen, which kept him on the radar. To all you young hockey players out there, consistency is a massive, massive attribute. We can't score a hat trick every game, and sometimes we think that if we didn't get points, we're not on our game. You need to impact games every time you're involved in them, because you never know who's in the crowd. And just because you got a hat trick last game doesn't mean that the scout was there to see it, or doesn't even know that you might have got it. You need to perform every night, and you need to impact games every time you step on the ice. Consistency is a big deal. And if he didn't come to play Jamie Benn there when he was a 17-year-old and not many people were knowing who his name was, he might not have got drafted by the Dallas Stars, and maybe he wouldn't have got to the Kelowna Rockets, and wouldn't have got the World Junior invite, and wouldn't have done all these things that allowed him to become the player that he was. So, testament to Jamie. Play hard every night, learn from Jamie, and that was one of my favorite stories from the interview with Dennis. So, until next time, play hard and keep your head up.